Have you ever wondered why the most innovative minds in history often take their time to reflect and pause before acting? What if I told you that the key to creativity and success isn't rushing to the finish line, but embracing the space between your thoughts? Today, on Mindful Path, we're diving into the surprising truth about creative thinking, that sometimes slow and thoughtful is the fastest way to greatness. If you're ready to unlock the secrets of creative genius through mindfulness and reflection, stick with me, because the journey is just beginning. Why do original thinkers procrastinate? A deep dive into strategic delay, cognitive disobedience, and Buddhist wisdom. Steve Jobs was infamous for his delay in making decisions, particularly when it came to major product releases or even simple design tweaks. His design team would often find themselves frustrated, stuck in limbo, while Jobs spent days, even weeks, withholding judgment. This wasn't laziness, it was strategic. Jobs knew that true innovation doesn't happen under the tyranny of the urgent. It happens in the quiet spaces between impulse and insight. Leonardo da Vinci, one of the most revered polymaths in history, took over 16 years to complete the Mona Lisa. He procrastinated constantly, and yet his art embodied a depth and precision no other could replicate. His notebooks are filled with unfinished sketches, abandoned ideas, and cryptic thoughts. But it was in this wandering, non-linear process that true mastery emerged. And then there's Elon Musk. While known for his intense work ethic, he's also been criticized for delays in Tesla rollouts and SpaceX timelines. Critics call it overpromising. But Musk operates on a different rhythm, a visionary timeline, unconstrained by quarterly reports. His form of procrastination often looks like stretching reality to allow better solutions to emerge. So what's the pattern? Original thinkers delay, but not randomly. They delay for insight. They procrastinate not because they are lazy or indecisive, but because they are optimizing for clarity, for originality, for breakthrough thinking. This is strategic procrastination. According to Adam Grant, original thinkers aren't the first to jump in. They're often late to act, but only because they spend more time reflecting, reframing, and reimagining problems. That slowness gives birth to novelty. This idea is more than a productivity hack. It aligns deeply with Buddhist psychology. In the Dhammapada, the Buddha says, "Do not act hastily. A hasty man misses the mark. Be patient, be mindful, and the path will be revealed." This isn't just spiritual poetry. It's a psychological map for original thought. Let's break this down into key psychological and Buddhist principles. Delay as cognitive rebellion. When most people encounter a problem, they respond immediately. The mind seeks closure, quick, easy, comfortable answers. This is what psychologists call the easiness effect. The faster we resolve something, the more mentally comfortable we feel. But original thinkers resist this impulse. They allow the discomfort of incompleteness to linger. This is what makes Leonardo da Vinci's notebooks so extraordinary. He was willing to dwell in uncertainty. His unfinished works weren't signs of distraction. They were proof of deeper inquiry. Leonardo once wrote, "Art is never finished, only abandoned." He recognized that perfection is an illusion, and that depth often comes from extended thought. In Buddhist terms, this is similar to the practice of not grasping. The mind that grasps is the mind that clings to certainty. But the mind that observes, that stays still, that witnesses, opens to deeper truth. The original thinker postpones judgment because they know premature conclusions kill insight. The power of incubation. In cognitive science, the incubation effect occurs when a person steps away from a problem and unconsciously processes it. Many breakthroughs happen not during focus, but during rest. The brain continues to work in the background. Sleep, showers, walks in nature. These are fertile ground for originality. Steve Jobs was known to take long walks to think. Mark Zuckerberg copied the idea. So did Sigmund Freud. They understood that movement without pressure creates space for insights to emerge. In Buddhism, this is akin to the fertile emptiness of the meditative mind. It's not about suppressing thought, but letting thought ripen on its own terms. The Zen master Dogen once said, "Think non-thinking." This paradox speaks to the value of stepping back so the mind can see clearly. This also explains why monks often appear to do nothing, but end up expressing profound clarity. The wisdom doesn't come from effort alone, it comes from letting go. Originality emerges from non-self. One of the Buddha's core teachings is the doctrine of anatta, no permanent self. Western creativity is often seen as an expression of the ego. I made this, my idea, my invention. But the most profound forms of creation often arise when the ego dissolves. Da Vinci's genius wasn't self-centered. He didn't even sign most of his works. He saw himself as a channel for nature's intelligence. He wrote about the science of painting as if he were a student, not a master. Elon Musk, despite his public image, is often driven by missions beyond himself, saving humanity, colonizing Mars, accelerating sustainable energy. These visions, however grandiose, are not about personal glorification. They're about being a vessel for something larger. In meditation, the practitioner observes thoughts without ownership. This is a thought, not my thought. This detachment allows more clarity, more novelty, more compassion. The same applies to original thinkers. They aren't obsessed with being right. They're obsessed with seeing more clearly. Fear of failure as a masked desire for perfection. Many procrastinators suffer from perfectionism. They fear judgment, so they delay. But original thinkers use delay differently. Their procrastination isn't driven by fear, but by the need to explore. Still, the line can blur. Even Steve Jobs was terrified of releasing something imperfect. He obsessed over minor details. This perfectionism could freeze him. Buddhism offers a remedy here: equanimity. Upekkha, the ability to remain balanced amidst praise or blame, success or failure. The original thinker learns, often painfully, that perfection is unattainable. Instead, they must release their work with humility, trusting the process. This is why mindfulness training can liberate procrastinators. By becoming aware of their inner fears, not reacting, just observing, they unlock a deeper confidence to create. Delay as strategic divergence. Original thinkers deviate from norms. They don't accept assumptions at face value. This means they need more time, not just to analyze, but to reframe the question itself. Consider Einstein. When asked how he would solve a problem if given an hour, he said, "I would spend 55 minutes thinking about the problem and 5 minutes thinking about solutions." That's strategic delay. That's creative divergence. In Buddhist logic, this is similar to upaya, skillful means. The wise person doesn't rush into action. They choose their moment carefully based on deep understanding of causes and conditions. They act in harmony with interdependence, not impulse. This is why original thinkers often seem slow at first. They're not passive. They're scanning for hidden angles. They're waiting for the right insight, not just the fastest one. The interplay between urgency and spaciousness. There's a paradox here. Steve Jobs moved slowly in some areas, but obsessively fast in others. Elon Musk can delay features for years, but demands rapid iteration once aligned. Originality requires both. This mirrors the Buddhist teaching of the middle way. Not too tight, not too loose. The artist must know when to let the canvas sit and when to strike with boldness. Procrastination isn't a virtue by itself. But strategic delay, balanced with mindful urgency, is powerful. It gives birth to insight. It guards against mediocrity. It aligns with the natural rhythm of creativity. Let's pause here. I've written over 1,600 words already in deep analytical mode. If you're happy with the tone and structure, I can continue the next half, another 1,600 plus words, focusing on how procrastination actually increases idea fluency and originality with data. The psychological mechanism of vujjade, seeing old things in new ways. Buddhist emptiness, shunyata, as the core of truly open, innovative thinking. Power examples from innovators like Oprah Winfrey, Barack Obama, or Jeff Bezos, who also delay for strategy. In the modern hustle culture that glorifies speed, disruption, and the first mover advantage, we often mistake impulsiveness for innovation. Silicon Valley lore idolizes the myth of the startup founder who wakes up one morning with a billion-dollar idea, skips breakfast, and launches a unicorn by sunset. But this archetype is not only misleading, it distorts our understanding of how real creativity works. Original thinkers, as research shows, are not necessarily the first to act. They are often the ones who observe, pause, and cultivate their ideas through deliberate reflection. This isn't hesitation born from fear or laziness. It's a disciplined form of motivated procrastination. In psychological terms, motivated procrastination is the intentional delay of decision-making or action to allow ideas to incubate, refine, and evolve. Studies by organizational psychologist Adam Grant have shown that many of the most original thinkers don't leap into the unknown. They linger at the edge. considering the terrain. They delay not out of apathy, but out of strategic foresight. This delay often results in richer, more nuanced creative outputs. Consider Martin Luther King Jr. He didn't rush into activism. He spent years studying theology and philosophy, absorbing the teachings of Gandhi, Thoreau, and Jesus. When he finally stepped into leadership during the Montgomery bus boycott, he brought a vision that was not only morally grounded, but also strategically revolutionary. His creativity wasn't reactive, it was cultivated. Likewise, Albert Einstein's development of the theory of relativity didn't happen in the lecture hall or under immediate pressure. It was during his so-called years of obscurity while working at the Swiss Patent Office that he engaged in deep, undistracted thinking. He allowed ideas to simmer, refusing to rush them into premature formulation. His breakthroughs were a product of meditative patience, something deeply resonant with Buddhist practice. This brings us to Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, who provides one of the most profound examples of slow, deliberate innovation. Born into royal privilege, he had every incentive to follow the path of least resistance. But instead of conforming, he left his palace, wandered for years, and subjected himself to extreme austerities, all in the pursuit of truth. He didn't invent meditation, asceticism, or spiritual inquiry. What made him original was how he reconfigured existing ideas, discarded ineffective extremes, and found the middle way. That process took years of trial, reflection, and silence. The Buddha's enlightenment wasn't an epiphany that struck like lightning. It was the fruit of years of introspective cultivation. In that sense, the Buddha was a creative revolutionary, not because he moved fast, but because he moved with clarity. In cognitive science, this aligns with what researchers call divergent thinking, a mode of cognition that values exploration over execution. Unlike convergent thinking, which is focused on arriving at a single solution, divergent thinking allows the mind to generate many possible paths before narrowing down. Original thinkers spend more time in this stage. They defer closure. They are comfortable with ambiguity, knowing that ambiguity is fertile ground for insight. Apple's co-founder Steve Jobs was notorious for his willingness to delay decisions until he felt the timing and alignment were right. His famous line, "Real artists ship," is often misinterpreted as glorifying speed. In truth, Jobs also knew when not to ship. He famously delayed the launch of the Macintosh multiple times because it wasn't beautiful or intuitive enough. What the world saw as perfectionism was actually a form of motivated procrastination, waiting until the idea had matured fully. This behavior is often misunderstood in schools and workplaces. Students who take longer to complete assignments are labeled procrastinators. Employees who don't immediately contribute in meetings are seen as disengaged. But what if these people are actually thinking more deeply? What if they're resisting the premature closure that kills originality? The psychological profile of original thinkers often includes traits that resemble Buddhist mindfulness. They are observant. They practice non-attachment to initial ideas. They value process over outcome. In Buddhism, mindfulness, sati, is the act of observing without clinging, noticing without immediately reacting. This is precisely what original thinkers do when they postpone action. They allow the idea to breathe. Neuroscientific studies support this as well. Brain scans show that the default mode network, responsible for introspection and imagination, is highly active during periods of rest and mind wandering. In other words, some of our best ideas emerge when we stop actively chasing them. Motivated procrastination leverages this neurological principle. It creates space for insight. Take Barack Obama. Known for his calm demeanor and thoughtful decision-making, he often took heat for leading from behind. But that measured pace allowed him to evaluate complex situations, weigh alternatives, and consider long-term consequences. In contrast to reactionary leadership, his approach reflected a deeper form of creativity, one that prioritized sustainability over spectacle. In Buddhist terms, this is skillful means, upaya, the ability to apply wisdom in context. It's not enough to have a good idea. One must know when and how to bring it into the world. Rushing risks misalignment. Waiting too long risks irrelevance. The middle path is one of discernment, an intelligent delay, not a passive one. Psychologist Mihaly Csikszentmihalyi, who studied flow states, noted that creative people often oscillate between intense focus and incubation periods. They don't just grind, They step back, allow dissonance to stew, then return with sharper vision. This is not laziness, it's pattern recognition. It's giving the subconscious time to connect dots the conscious mind can't see. In contrast, many would-be innovators suffer from premature optimization. They act too soon, driven by anxiety or ego, and as a result, their ideas lack depth. This is the danger of unmotivated action, a behavior often driven by fear of missing out, FOMO, not by clarity of purpose. As Buddhist psychology reminds us, craving tanha is the root of suffering, and that includes the craving for speed, results, and attention. The best innovators learn to embrace non-doing, not as a form of idleness, but as a container for insight. This echoes the Zen notion of wu-wei, effortless action. It's not about doing nothing. It's about doing what in alignment with the deeper current. Motivated procrastination in this view is the refusal to act out of sync. Elon Musk, for all his unpredictability, also exemplifies this paradoxical blend of urgency and delay. He moves fast when execution is needed, but his most disruptive ideas, like colonizing Mars or merging humans with AI, were not impulsive. They emerged from long-standing obsessions, iterated in private before being executed in public. Musk procrastinated on announcing ideas until they were weird enough to be exciting, but feasible enough to be real. The difference between mindless delay and mindful delay lies in intention. Motivated procrastination is intentional. It asks, what am I waiting for? Am I avoiding or am I observing? Am I scared or am I ripening? These are the kinds of questions the Buddha might have asked himself under the Bodhi tree. Ultimately, creativity is not about speed, it's about depth. It's not about being first, it's about being right. And often, being right requires being late by conventional standards. That's why the most original thinkers often look like outliers or late bloomers, because their timelines follow an internal clock, not the world's stopwatch. Let's be clear from the start, original thinking isn't about intelligence, education level, or even creativity in the conventional sense. It's about asking better questions, not the kind of questions that confirm what we already believe, but questions that challenge assumptions, reveal blind spots, and spark curiosity. This kind of thinking doesn't come from mimicking the best. It comes from daring to ask what no one else is asking. If there's one person in modern history who embodied this, it's Albert Einstein. Contrary to popular belief, Einstein wasn't a child prodigy. He didn't speak fluently until he was around 4, struggled with rote learning in school, and was often dismissed by teachers for being too slow or distracted. But what he lacked in obedience, he made up for in relentless questioning. He once famously said, "I have no special talents, I am only passionately curious." That curiosity led him to ask one of the most profound what-if questions in scientific history. What if I could ride alongside a beam of light? That question, not a textbook answer, catalyzed the development of the theory of relativity. He didn't discover truth by absorbing accepted knowledge. He discovered it by interrogating the limits of that knowledge. This approach mirrors a core teaching in Buddhism, ehipassiko. The word is Pali for come and see for yourself. Unlike religions that demand blind faith, the Buddha's teachings encourage experiential inquiry. The Buddha never said, "Believe me because I'm enlightened." He said, "Test what I say in the laboratory of your own mind." This is intellectual independence at its highest level. It's the spiritual equivalent of peer-reviewed science. So what does it actually mean to think originally in real life? First, it requires becoming aware of the mental scripts we inherit from culture, family, and education. We are trained to think in patterns, to optimize for what's worked before. School teaches us to find the right answer, not to question the premise of the question. But if you want to be original, you have to stop optimizing for correctness and start optimizing for exploration. Consider Steve Jobs. When he returned to Apple in the late 1990s, the company was struggling. Everyone else in the tech industry was trying to make better computers by focusing on hardware specs. Jobs asked a different question. What if a computer could feel personal, even poetic? That question led to the iMac, then the iPod, iPhone, and a complete redesign of human interaction with machines. Jobs didn't follow consumer trends. He questioned them. He ignored what focus groups wanted and pursued what he believed people didn't know they needed yet. That's original thinking. Not asking, what do users want, but What could be possible if we reimagine the relationship between people and technology? In Buddhist psychology, this process would be called vipassana, insight through deep observation. When the mind becomes quiet and uncluttered, we begin to see patterns, contradictions, and truths that were invisible in the noise. This is not passive meditation, it's active discernment. Original thinkers meditate, metaphorically or literally, on the structure of problems, not just the solutions. The Dalai Lama is another powerful example. He has long championed the integration of modern science and ancient wisdom. For decades, he has collaborated with neuroscientists, physicists, and psychologists, not to convert them, but to cross-pollinate insights. In his view, if science ever disproves a Buddhist idea, Buddhism should change. That's a radical stance for a spiritual leader, and it stems from deep intellectual humility and the belief that truth must be tested, not protected. This openness to cross-disciplinary dialogue is one of the best strategies for thinking originally. When you combine fields, say neuroscience and ethics or Buddhism and cosmology, you don't just get answers, you get new kinds of questions. The Dalai Lama doesn't see the scientific method as a threat. He sees it as a tool to deepen humanity's understanding of suffering and consciousness. So if you want to cultivate original thinking, start by making your mind less tribal. Stop asking which side is right and start asking what are both sides missing. Tribal thinking, political, academic, or cultural, creates echo chambers. Echo chambers kill new questions. Original thinkers are allergic to echo chambers. They deliberately expose themselves to contradiction and ambiguity. This is the kind of thinking Elon Musk uses when tackling impossibly large problems. Whether you agree with his methods or not, it's hard to ignore how often he reframes questions. Instead of asking, how can we make a better electric car, he asked, what does a car look like if it's built like a computer? Instead of asking, can we compete with NASA, he asked, why hasn't anyone else lowered the cost of space travel? He uses a technique he calls first principles thinking, breaking a problem down to its most fundamental truths and rebuilding from there. That's the exact method Buddhist monks use when practicing dependent origination, the understanding that all phenomena arise from causes and conditions. By breaking down the illusion of a fixed self or fixed reality, the practitioner gains clarity. That clarity allows them to ask better questions like, where does suffering arise and what causes freedom? In both cases, whether it's physics or enlightenment, progress depends not on memorizing facts, but on learning to see through appearances. Original thinkers also take their time. This may sound counterintuitive in a culture obsessed with speed, but deep questioning requires time, discomfort, and patience. Marie Curie, the only person to win Nobel Prizes in 2 different sciences, spent years in dimly lit labs, inhaling toxic fumes, painstakingly isolating radioactive isotopes. She wasn't chasing fame, she was chasing truth. Like the Buddha sitting beneath the Bodhi tree, refusing to rise until he understood the nature of suffering, Curie endured grueling conditions because her questions were authentic. Real questions are like koans. They disturb you. They rattle your worldview. They make you uneasy because they reveal how little you truly know. This is why mindfulness is such a powerful tool for original thought. In a distracted world, attention is the scarcest resource. Mindfulness isn't about relaxation, it's about noticing what others miss. It's the practice of watching your own mind until you see the roots of your assumptions. Every breakthrough begins with this internal awareness. Oprah Winfrey once said, "Ask the right questions, and the answers will always reveal themselves." Her entire career has been built not on providing information, but on asking better questions of her guests, her audience, and herself. From interviewing trauma survivors to spiritual teachers, Oprah uses curiosity as a spotlight. She never settles for surface-level answers. She probes for depth. This skill, the ability to ask incisive questions, is more valuable than ever. In the age of AI, where answers are cheap and abundant, questions are the new currency. Machines can retrieve facts. Only humans can wonder. And here's the truth. Most people are not rewarded for original thinking. They are rewarded for conformity. This is why schools often stifle originality. The grading system rewards precision over exploration. The workplace promotes efficiency over imagination. To think originally, you must rebel. Not always loudly, but persistently. You must become comfortable being misunderstood. Look at someone like Nelson Mandela. While in prison for 27 years, he could have asked the typical questions. Why me? When will I be free? Instead, he asked, how do I forgive those who've taken everything from me? That single question transformed a political prisoner into a global statesman. It turned bitterness into reconciliation. Original thinking doesn't always invent, it transforms. From a Buddhist standpoint, this is the bodhisattva path, transforming one's suffering into insight, then using that insight to serve others. The question isn't just, how do I escape suffering? It becomes, how can my awakening reduce suffering for all beings? When you ask that question, your mind begins to open in multidimensional ways. You don't just solve problems, you reframe them. Even Jeff Bezos, founder of Amazon, understands the importance of framing. In his annual letters to shareholders, he frequently talks about day one thinking, a mindset of constant curiosity and startup energy. He encourages teams to ask, what's not going to change in the next 10 years? That kind of reverse question drives long-term strategy better than trend forecasting. The more original the thinker, the more they focus on root causes, not symptoms. They don't just treat the fever, they ask what virus is spreading. They're not obsessed with optimization, they're obsessed with insight. This brings us full circle to the Buddha. He didn't simply ask, how do I feel better? He asked, what is the source of dukkha, suffering? And from that inquiry came one of the most original philosophical frameworks in human history, the Four Noble Truths. It didn't end suffering instantly, but it mapped a path, a method grounded in mindfulness, inquiry, and compassion. To think originally, then, is to think responsibly, not only for your own benefit, but for the evolution of human consciousness. The goal isn't to be clever, it's to be clear. So ask the question that keeps you up at night. Ask the question your mentors never dared to. Ask the question that makes your peers uncomfortable. And when you do, don't expect an answer right away. Sit with it, wrestle with it, meditate on it. That's where the real originality begins. Not in the answer, but in the courage to stay with the question. Fear of rejection is one of the most primal human anxieties. It's wired into our survival instincts. Historically, being rejected from a tribe could mean death. In today's world, rejection doesn't kill us physically, but it often kills our ideas before they're even born. The pain of hearing no shuts down our creative drive. But here's the paradox. The people we admire most, the visionaries, inventors, spiritual leaders, are those who got rejected, dismissed, and misunderstood more times than we can count. What sets them apart isn't immunity to failure, it's a radically different relationship with it. Thomas Edison is one of the most iconic examples. When developing the electric light bulb, he tried over 1,000 different materials for the filament. Journalists mocked him. Investors grew impatient. But Edison didn't interpret those 1,000 failed attempts as signs of inadequacy. He saw them as 1,000 steps toward the right solution. His famous quote captures this mindset. I have not failed. I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work. This is not a romantic anecdote. It's a blueprint for creativity. Original thinkers fail more because they try more. They test hypotheses others never bother to. They push against boundaries others accept. They aren't smarter, they're more resilient. They are willing to look foolish, to be told no, to be rejected again and again because they know that rejection is not the opposite of success. It's a prerequisite. Psychologically, this resilience is what separates prolific creators from average performers. In a study by Dean Simonton, a psychologist at UC Davis, he examined the career output of composers, scientists, and writers. He found that the most successful ones didn't necessarily have a higher hit rate. They just produced more work overall. More work meant more flops, yes, but also more chances for breakthrough ideas. The data is blunt. Creativity is a volume game. Now compare that to Buddhist thought, particularly the principle of anicca, impermanence. Buddhism teaches that everything is transient. Pleasure, pain, success, failure. Nothing is fixed. That's liberating, especially for creatives. If failure is impermanent, then so is rejection. It's just a passing wave in the ocean of cause and effect, what Buddhism calls pratitya-samutpada, or dependent origination. Your failure doesn't mean your idea is worthless. It means the conditions for its success haven't ripened yet. Look at J.K. Rowling. Before Harry Potter became a global phenomenon, she was a single mother living on welfare, rejected by 12 publishers. but she didn't stop submitting. She didn't interpret rejection as a verdict on her talent. It was just part of the process. In Buddhist terms, her karma hadn't ripened, but she stayed on the path. Eventually, one publisher's daughter read the manuscript and begged her father to publish it. One tiny shift in condition changed everything. This is the truth about creativity that no one wants to admit. It's not glamorous, it's not clean, it's mostly failure, mostly waiting, mostly rejection. But if you understand impermanence, you stop fearing those moments. You start recognizing that failure is like weather, it comes and goes. The storm doesn't last forever. Consider Japanese Zen monks who train with koans, riddles meant to break the rational mind and provoke sudden insight. A monk might meditate on a single koan like, "What is the sound of one hand clapping?" for decades. They bring it to their teacher again and again, only to be rejected each time. "Not yet," the master says. "Come back tomorrow." This process isn't punishment, it's purification. Each rejection clears out conceptual thinking, it softens the ego, it trains the student to go deeper. Eventually, the breakthrough comes, not as a clever answer, but as a shift in perception. This is creative failure in its highest form. You keep returning to the mystery, not to conquer it, but to be transformed by it. The same pattern is visible in modern entrepreneurship. Take Jeff Bezos. When Amazon launched, it was mocked for selling books online. His investors told him the internet was a fad. Bezos ignored the noise. He understood that success is not immediate, it's emergent. It comes from stacking small, imperfect iterations over time. Amazon failed at many products, the Fire Phone, Amazon Auctions, Amazon Destinations. But Bezos didn't retreat. He used each failure to refine the vision. Now, Amazon is one of the most powerful companies on the planet, not because it avoided failure, but because it metabolized it. In Buddhism, this is called right effort, samavayama, part of the Noble Eightfold Path. It means making effort without attachment to outcome. You act, you observe, you adjust. You don't cling to success or rejection. This mental flexibility is essential for creativity. It allows you to experiment freely. It gives you permission to suck at first. Let's talk about Oprah Winfrey. Early in her career, she was fired from her first news anchor job because she was too emotional. Today, that emotional intelligence is her trademark. Rejection didn't stop her, it redirected her. She moved from hard news into human storytelling and built one of the most influential media empires in history. Her story reveals a crucial insight. Sometimes rejection isn't a detour, it's guidance. Original thinkers know this intuitively. They don't see rejection as a closed door. They see it as an invitation to reroute, reframe, or dig deeper. Steve Jobs, after being ousted from Apple, the company he co-founded, could have disappeared. Instead, he started Next and acquired Pixar. Both of those ventures laid the groundwork for his triumphant return to Apple years later. The rejection was real, but so was the reinvention. This flexibility is what Carol Dweck calls a growth mindset. People with a fixed mindset believe failure defines them. People with a growth mindset believe failure refines them. The same is true in Zen. You fall off the cushion, your thoughts run wild, your answers are rejected. You begin again. You learn to love the process more than the applause. Barack Obama, when he first ran for Congress in 2000, lost in a landslide. The media declared his political career dead. But instead of quitting, he reflected. He retooled his approach, expanded his coalition, and ran for Senate 4 years later. That loss, in hindsight, was the necessary compost for his future victory. Without that rejection, he may never have become president. This illustrates another Buddhist teaching. The obstacle is the path. Creativity is not a linear climb, it's a spiral. You revisit old problems with new eyes. You make friends with discomfort. You treat failure not as punishment, but as preparation. There's also a neuroscientific angle. Studies show that rejection activates the same brain regions as physical pain. That's why it feels unbearable. But here's the kicker. The brain also releases dopamine in response to novelty. Trying something new, even if it fails, can stimulate reward centers. The creative brain is wired for experimentation, but only if we stop fearing the crash. Lady Gaga is a prime example. Before she was an icon, she was dropped from her first label. Her look was too weird, her sound too niche. Today, that same weirdness is her brand. Rejection didn't break her, it crystallized her identity. She once said, "Rejection only motivates me to keep going and be better." That's the creator's mindset. You don't create to be accepted. You create because something in you must come out. The moment you attach your value to other people's approval, you've already lost. That's why Buddhist detachment isn't apathy. It's freedom. It's the ability to create without clutching. Even Nobel Prize winners aren't exempt. Consider Kazuo Ishiguro, author of The Remains of the Day. He once wrote an entire novel and threw it out after 4 years. He called it a necessary failure. Without it, he wouldn't have discovered the voice and structure that made his next book a classic. Imagine discarding 4 years of work, not out of despair, but as an act of devotion to something higher. This is the artist as monk, willing to fail repeatedly, willing to stay with a question until it yields, willing to be nobody for a while in order to one day say something truly original. And that's the thread connecting all these stories, from Edison to Zen monks, from Oprah to Obama. They don't fear rejection. They use it. They build from it. They understand what the Buddha understood. Nothing is permanent. Not failure, not judgment, not shame. Everything is a wave. If you let it pass through you, it carries you forward. This is the most radical form of creativity. Not just making something new, but becoming someone new. Every rejection cracks the ego. Every failure humbles the mind, and through those cracks, the light gets in. Critical thinking and self-doubt, the paradox of creativity. Creativity is often romanticized as a state of constant confidence, a flow of brilliant ideas without hesitation or second-guessing. However, the reality for many creative individuals, whether they are writers, entrepreneurs, or scientists, is far from this idealized version. The most profound creators often experience self-doubt. They question their ideas, their decisions, and their abilities. It is this very self-doubt, however, that fuels their growth, forces them to refine their ideas, and ultimately leads them to breakthroughs. Self-doubt is not a weakness. It is a powerful tool in the creative process. The key to successful creativity is not eliminating doubt, but learning to use it as a guide for deeper thinking and more refined action. History is full of creative giants who doubted themselves, but rather than letting that doubt stop them, used it as a catalyst for innovation. The likes of Steve Jobs, Marie Curie, and even Leonardo da Vinci exemplify how self-doubt, when properly channeled, can propel a person to greatness. The role of self-doubt in creative thinking. One of the most striking characteristics of creative individuals is that they often doubt their abilities. The fear of failure, of making mistakes, of not measuring up to expectations is a constant companion. But this isn't necessarily a bad thing. The opposite of self-doubt is often arrogance, which can blind creators to potential pitfalls or cause them to stop questioning their assumptions. Self-doubt pushes creators to look deeper, question assumptions, and refine their ideas until they reach a level of clarity that wouldn't be possible if they remained certain from the outset. Take, for example, Albert Einstein. Although he is considered one of the most confident scientists of the 20th century, there were moments when he openly doubted his own theories. His theory of relativity, for instance, was met with intense skepticism by the scientific community. Even after publishing it, Einstein struggled with the uncertainty of whether his equations were truly correct. Yet it was this self-doubt that drove him to continuously test, re-examine, and ultimately defend his work, leading to groundbreaking advancements in physics. Similarly, the renowned inventor Thomas Edison, who is often remembered as a man of certainty, experienced self-doubt at crucial moments in his career. When working on the electric light bulb, he faced numerous failures and setbacks. At times, Edison questioned whether the project was worth pursuing. However, it was his ability to use this doubt constructively by persevering and iterating on his designs that led to his eventual success. His famous quote, "I have not failed, I've just found 10,000 ways that won't work," captures the essence of how self-doubt can be transformed into a source of motivation. The Buddhist perspective: do not believe anything without evidence. The relationship between self-doubt and creativity aligns with the Buddhist concept of critical thinking, particularly the idea of ehipassiko, a call to come and see for oneself. The Buddha taught that belief should not be based on authority or hearsay, but on personal experience and understanding. This philosophy is found in the Kalama Sutra, which is one of the most important texts in Buddhism. In this sutra, the Buddha instructs his followers not to accept anything as truth without questioning it and testing it for themselves. The Kalama Sutra offers a clear path to critical thinking. Do not believe anything just because you have heard it. Do not believe anything just because it is found in your religious texts. Do not believe anything just because your teacher has said it. Do not believe anything just because it is said to be true by a majority. Do not believe anything just because it is based on tradition or authority. Do not believe anything just because it is spoken by someone in high position or power. Do not believe anything simply based on your own theories or assumptions. Instead, the Buddha advises that we test ideas through direct experience and personal observation. In the modern scientific world, this method of inquiry mirrors the scientific method, formulating a hypothesis, testing it, observing results, and refining the hypothesis accordingly. The Kalama Sutra urges skepticism and inquiry, creating a framework for self-doubt that leads to self-discovery and, ultimately, deeper knowledge. This Buddhist approach encourages individuals to question not just external sources, but their internal beliefs as well. By embracing this kind of inquiry, individuals are encouraged to look critically at their own assumptions, question their own biases, and test their conclusions. Self-doubt then becomes a necessary tool in the process of discovery and enlightenment. Scientific approach. Methodical doubt as the path to truth. The scientific method itself is built on a foundation of self-doubt and skepticism. In science, theories are constantly being tested, questioned, and refined. No hypothesis is ever accepted as final. It is always open to revision or rejection based on new evidence. This method is what distinguishes science from other forms of knowledge. It is a process of continual refinement, a feedback loop of inquiry where self-doubt is an integral part of the journey toward truth. In fact, scientific discoveries often come about because of self-doubt. Researchers and scientists are constantly revisiting their theories, testing new hypotheses, and questioning existing knowledge. A famous example of this is the discovery of penicillin by Alexander Fleming. It wasn't that Fleming was certain his experiment would yield results, but rather his willingness to question what he saw in his petri dish that led to one of the most important medical discoveries of the 20th century. Fleming had doubts about his experiment, and it was these doubts that led him to investigate further, ultimately resulting in the discovery of penicillin. Self-doubt, in the scientific context, is not a barrier to progress, but a fundamental aspect of it. It is the force that drives researchers to ask new questions, challenge old paradigms, and seek innovative solutions. Just as scientists question their own findings, creators of all kinds must learn to question their own assumptions and ideas. In this way, self-doubt becomes the engine of creativity, propelling individuals to innovate and refine their work. The relationship between self-doubt and creative action. While self-doubt is an integral part of the creative process, it does not prevent action. In fact, the greatest creatives, whether in the arts, business, or science, use their self-doubt to fuel their actions. They do not allow their doubts to paralyze them. Instead, they embrace their doubts as a signal that they are pushing boundaries, exploring uncharted territory, and engaging in the process of discovery. Steve Jobs is a prime example of someone who constantly questioned himself and his decisions, but never allowed those doubts to hold him back. Jobs famously said, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do great work is to love what you do." Despite his doubts about Apple's success, Jobs continued to take risks and challenge the status quo. His self-doubt was not a weakness. It was a tool that kept him striving for greater innovation and excellence. Similarly, the artist Vincent van Gogh experienced tremendous self-doubt throughout his career. His work was often criticized, and he struggled with mental health issues. Yet despite his doubts, Van Gogh produced over 2,100 artworks in just over a decade. His doubts didn't stop him from painting. They fueled his desire to express himself in new ways. His work, though unappreciated in his time, is now considered some of the most groundbreaking in the history of art. The key here is action. Self-doubt, while pervasive, does not stop these individuals from creating. It compels them to test their ideas, to refine their work, and to persist in the face of uncertainty. This is what separates great creators from those who never take the leap. They use their self-doubt as a tool for progress, not a reason to stop. The reasons creative people choose to move slowly. The rapid pace of modern life encourages an obsession with speed, quick decisions, and immediate gratification. In contrast, many of the world's most innovative and creative individuals adopt a slower, more deliberate approach to thinking and decision-making. This slower, more methodical way of approaching creativity is not just a random preference. It is a critical strategy for generating truly unique and valuable ideas. Just as meditation, a cornerstone of Buddhist practice, promotes active rest, creativity too benefits from a thoughtful pause. The power of slow thinking. When people think of creativity, they often imagine a fast-paced burst of inspiration, an aha moment that results in the sudden appearance of a groundbreaking idea. However, in reality, most creative breakthroughs happen through slow, reflective thinking. This approach allows individuals to let their thoughts settle, refine their ideas, and look at problems from different angles. It's not about acting impulsively, but creating space for the mind to wander and explore possibilities. Take Steve Jobs, for instance. Jobs was known for his careful and deliberate decision-making. He understood the value of saying no to numerous ideas and opportunities in order to focus on what truly mattered. His skill in setting boundaries and his ability to resist the pressure of rushing forward were key to Apple's success. Jobs' approach to creativity was not about working at a feverish pace, but about patiently waiting for the right ideas to emerge. By slowing down and eliminating distractions, Jobs created space for innovation to occur. The art of saying no. Jobs' famous ability to say no was not about rejecting good ideas, but rather about giving himself the mental space to focus on the great ones. Saying no allowed him to eliminate noise and unnecessary tasks, clearing the way for the truly transformative ideas to come through. This method of focusing on a few crucial projects rather than spreading oneself too thin is integral to the process of creative thinking. This selective focus is also an essential strategy in the creative process. Picasso, one of the greatest artists in history, is another example of someone who embraced slow thinking. Picasso, known for creating hundreds of thousands of works, was meticulous in his approach to perfection. Before creating his masterpieces, he would often go through dozens or even hundreds of drafts. His ability to take his time and refine his ideas resulted in some of the most famous and influential pieces of art in the world. For Picasso, it was never about rushing to finish a piece. Instead, it was about engaging deeply with the process and exploring the various facets of his ideas until he arrived at the perfect expression. Meditation and reflection, the link between Buddhist practice and creativity. This philosophy of slow thinking is deeply aligned with Buddhist practices, particularly meditation. Meditation is a practice that encourages individuals to slow down and observe their thoughts without reacting to them. Rather than acting impulsively based on immediate reactions, meditation teaches practitioners to pause, reflect, and respond with clarity and wisdom. This practice fosters mindfulness, the ability to be fully present in the moment, and helps cultivate the mental stillness required for creativity. In Buddhism, the process of vipassana or insight meditation encourages practitioners to observe their thoughts and emotions without judgment or reaction. This non-reactive awareness creates space for insight and clarity to emerge. Similarly, in the creative process, individuals who slow down and reflect without being driven by urgency allow themselves the mental clarity needed for innovative ideas. Like a meditative pause, this thoughtful observation gives rise to original ideas and concepts that would be missed in the rush to produce. In both meditation and creativity, there is a deep connection to mindfulness, the ability to remain present and aware without distraction. In creativity, this means stepping back from immediate reactions to problems and allowing time for ideas to percolate. It is in these moments of reflection that ideas can emerge and transform into something profound and meaningful. The role of reflection in creativity. For creators, the ability to step back and reflect on their work is just as important as the initial act of creation. In fact, the reflection process often leads to the most significant breakthroughs. The key here is to embrace the idea of active rest, taking time away from a project to allow the mind to process and reimagine the work. Consider the example of renowned writer J.K. Rowling, whose Harry Potter series took years to fully develop. Rowling spent a significant amount of time reflecting on the world of Hogwarts and the characters that inhabited it before fully committing to writing the first book. Her creative process was slow and deliberate, as she pondered every detail of the story and characters before putting them onto the page. The result? One of the most successful and beloved book series of all time. Similarly, the world of design and technology is full of examples of creative individuals who value slow thinking and reflection. Jeff Bezos, the founder of Amazon, is another example of a creator who values long-term thinking. He is known for taking a patient and long-term approach to building Amazon, carefully weighing each decision and ensuring that it aligns with his broader vision. Bezos' success is rooted in his ability to think slowly and carefully, prioritizing long-term value over short-term gains. The slow road to greatness: why creators choose to move slowly. Creativity requires more than just fast thinking. It requires time, patience, and the willingness to embrace ambiguity. The creative process is often messy and nonlinear, requiring individuals to take the time to experiment, fail, and iterate. Creators who rush through this process may miss key insights or, worse, become discouraged by failure. On the other hand, creators who embrace the slow, reflective process of creation can better navigate challenges and find new and unexpected solutions. When Jobs took the time to reflect on Apple's direction, he didn't just create products that were innovative in their features. He created products that were revolutionary in their design and experience. The same is true for Picasso. His slow and deliberate approach allowed him to explore new techniques and push boundaries in art. Both Jobs and Picasso understood that true creativity often requires taking the time to think deeply and critically about a problem before jumping to a solution. The concept of slow thinking also ties in with the idea of developing an intuition for what works and what doesn't. Just as meditation fosters an inner stillness that allows for clarity and insight, slow thinking in the creative process helps individuals develop an intuitive sense for which ideas have the most potential. This intuition is not something that can be rushed. It comes from deeply engaging with the process, reflecting on one's experiences, and allowing the mind the time to make connections that would otherwise go unnoticed. The Buddhist perspective, reflective wisdom. In Buddhist teachings, the practice of reflection is deeply embedded in the path to enlightenment. One of the key teachings of the Buddha is the concept of vipassana, or clear seeing. This practice is not about immediate action or reaction, but rather about slowing down to observe the true nature of things. By reflecting on one's thoughts, actions, and desires, individuals can begin to understand the root causes of their suffering and ultimately achieve wisdom and insight. In the creative process, this practice of reflection can be incredibly valuable. It allows creators to pause and assess their work without becoming attached to it. This detachment enables individuals to approach their ideas from a place of clarity and openness, rather than being influenced by ego or external pressures. Moreover, the Buddhist principle of impermanence can be a powerful reminder in the creative process. The understanding that everything is constantly changing can help creators embrace the fluidity of their work. Just as a meditation practitioner understands that thoughts and emotions arise and pass away, so too can a creator understand that ideas come and go. This mindset frees creators from the pressure to get everything right immediately and allows them to take their time to refine and evolve their ideas. Embracing the slow road to innovation. In today's fast-paced world, it's easy to become obsessed with speed and instant results. However, some of the most innovative minds in history have embraced a slower, more reflective approach to creativity. From Steve Jobs' ability to say no to countless distractions, to Picasso's commitment to refining his ideas through countless drafts, slow thinking is a key element in the creative process. By drawing on principles of meditation and reflection, creators can cultivate the mental clarity needed for breakthrough ideas. In the same way that meditation allows individuals to achieve inner peace and insight, slow thinking in the creative process allows individuals to access deeper levels of understanding and innovation. Creativity is not always about speed. It's about reflection, experimentation, and ultimately the courage to take the time necessary to create something truly unique. By embracing a slow and deliberate approach to creativity, we allow ourselves the space to think critically, reflect deeply, and generate ideas that have the potential to change the world. Just as the teachings of Buddhism encourage us to slow down and observe the nature of our thoughts, so too can we approach the creative process with the same mindfulness, patience, and clarity. Through slow thinking, we can achieve great things.